Welcome to this official Pioneer DJ launch video, and a very special day for us, for the staff at Pioneer DJ, but also for a lot of DJs out there that have been waiting for this product for a very long time. My name is Rob Anderson, and I'm the product planning manager for Pioneer DJ Europe. And today I'm going to present to you the much anticipated replacement to the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2. This is our brand new flagship multiplayer and the next stage in the evolution of the CDJ, the CDJ-3000. Now, the CDJ line has existed for 26 years, but it's been 19 years since the CDJ-1000 Mark I hit the market and really changed the entire DJ landscape as we knew it. This product, this CDJ line, has been truly industry shaping, and as we've progressed, it's clear that each new model is a subtle refinement from the predecessor. Now, as market leader and a company that prides itself on true, close and real organic relationships with the full spectrum of artists in all genres, we're able to conduct an unprecedented level of market research throughout the development. You know, with the advancements of technology, there's almost infinite options as to what can be incorporated and what can be achieved technically. And with every artist's input, in conjunction with our core Japanese engineering and innovation, we're able to ascertain exactly what upgrades should be implemented in order to help us improve upon what's commonly referred to as the near perfect CDJ workflow. And in turn, ensure that what we bring to you today provides the necessary infrastructure for every professional DJ's needs. So let's start first of all with the most visual changes to the unit. The screen, the hot cues, the jog wheel, and the overall size and build of the player. So first of all, as you can see, the screen is now way bigger. An increase of 3 inches from the previous model means we've now got a 9-inch touch responsive high definition screen with a resolution of 1280 by 720. This is the most precise and clearest display we've ever featured on a product to date. I'll come back to the screen later, as the majority of the demo is going to be focused on the upgrade to the GUI and the user experience accessed within here. The screen is the main focal point for all navigation, track browsing, and the information source for everything that happens while you're performing. So it's important to also explain how we've been able to achieve certain things that we've included within here. Directly below the screen, we've now got 8 easily accessible tactile switch hot cue buttons, which are laid out in a linear fashion, which feels more natural as you can easily assign and trigger hot cues directly below the full waveform display. The CDJ-3000 Nexus 2 had its hot cues split into 2 banks of 4. This resulted in a lot of confusion for artists who used 8 hot cues, including myself. The second bank often became a no-go for a lot of artists, so the CDJ-3000's layout becomes a huge functional upgrade, making this feature much more usable. Stepping into the future, we've also improved our infamous jog wheel design. Since the launch of the CDJ-1000 19 years back, we've consistently delivered the best tactile connection to your music possible. Our newly designed mechanism inside the jog wheel makes it feel smoother than any unit we've ever made. With far less moving parts, we've also reduced the platter noise. We've also reduced the touch latency by half compared to the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2 by using a single flat piece of acrylic. To add to the visual experience, we've also included a 3.5-inch on-jog display. This indicates playhead position, track artwork, and various other info, which you'll see in a minute when we start playing some music. Now, the changes to these 2 areas alone was the result of one of the most substantial evaluations we've ever conducted during development. The positioning of the hot cues was such a delicate decision for us to make. Our controller range features performance pads below the jog wheel, and this type of layout was considered and was definitely in the running. But the conclusion from an evaluation, which included over 200 artists, was close to 100% conclusive that the optimum positioning for the hot cue access would be safely above the jog wheel and below the screen, where it essentially becomes an extension of the waveform display. The area below the platter also hasn't changed for 25 years and is commonly used as a resting place to allow precise platter control and pitch bending. The size of the screen was also not randomly selected. Our extensive research throughout development indicated that 9 inches was the optimum size to allow advanced function control, navigation and performance of the player without visually overpowering DJs in a club environment or negatively affecting the relationship between the DJ and the crowd. There's also a number of other improvements to the aesthetics and the build quality that really solidify the CDJ-3000 as a workhorse for DJs that can really withstand whatever's thrown at it. We've redesigned the play, the cue, and the hot cue buttons and used much harder wearing components, meaning all three areas are superior to the CDJ-2000 Nexus 2. Rigorous testing on the new components and the new areas has resulted in over 1 million button presses without any damage across all three. The single piece of hardware in aluminium used for the top plate gives a premium feel, but it also ensures the player can withstand all the conditions presented in all types of gigs. The Ethernet port at the rear of the player has also been upgraded to gigabit speed, meaning we can link up to 6 CDJ-3000s in one Pro DJ Link connection. The lockable V-Lock power cable that ships with the product also guards against accidental disconnections. The CDJ-3000 also ships with a new high-quality digital coaxial cable as well as an analog RCA cable, which, before I load in some music and go into the performance features, takes us on to the sound quality. This is now another area where Pioneer DJ really excels, and the CDJ-3000 is the best sounding player we've ever built. To ensure the improvement on sound quality, the resistance components used for audio have been changed from metal oxide resistance to metal film resistance. We've worked extensively to eliminate noise from power supplies, LCDs and LEDs in the circuit in order to achieve clarity. The player also converts all playable audio formats up to 96K 32-bit and internally processes at 32-bit float. Overall, the 3000 has been tuned to provide optimum sound quality regardless of what files are played through it. You can listen for longer periods of time at high volumes without fatiguing your ears and get a more realistic representation of the spatial sound than any multiplayer has ever been able to achieve to this date. Now, the rest of the physical changes I'm going to explain once audio is running, but it's also really important to know what's going on under the hood of the player, because this is also a huge part of the upgrade. The CDJ-3000 is also our first MPU-driven unit. An MPU microprocessor is the driving force of this player, featuring two types of multi-core CPU. A dual-core ARM Cortex A57 at 1.5 GHz and a quad-core ARM Cortex A53 at 1.2 GHz. This industrial-grade MPU was selected specifically to deliver unprecedented performance and allow advanced new features to be realized, such as lightning-fast load time of tracks and hot cues, high-quality key shift and key sync, touch preview and touch cue, while providing 96K playback. These heavy processes can be performed in parallel while also delivering the highest audio quality ever achieved from a multiplayer. Let's get into actually performing on the product, the changes and the upgrades to the user interface and how they correlate to the new areas on the player. Playing from USB or SD card, the player supports the same formats as the previous player, FAT16, FAT32 or HFS+. As soon as I plug my USB in, the source button on the top left of the screen will flash to indicate that media is available for browsing. On the 3000, we've moved source selection into the touchscreen. Now we can use the touchscreen to browse our connected sources, or you can use the familiar tactile navigation section to the right-hand side in the same way you would to browse music. There's also a full breakdown of the USB on the right-hand side, detailing tracks, playlist, space used, and space remaining. Small thing, but extremely useful when playing back-to-back. We can also change the color of the USB, and lastly, load up my settings before we've even accessed the USB stick. Now, once I select my source, we're going to switch from source mode to browse mode. Now, instantly, you can see there's a dramatic difference to the browse layout from the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2. First of all, you can see a huge increase in the quality and the resolution. You'll also notice that there's now 10 lines of information showing instead of 8 on the previous player. And most importantly, you'll see that we have this category view on the far left, making the entire navigation of our device a software-style experience that's really akin to the Rekordbox software. The browse categories shown are fully customizable within Rekordbox. However, I've left them as default for the purpose of this demo. We can select categories using the touchscreen, and of course we can now swipe up and down, something we couldn't do on the previous player. Or we can use the familiar navigation section on the right-hand side something which the majority of users will be extremely familiar with. Now I'm going to jump down to the playlist category first and access playlist view. But before I enter a playlist, I'm going to adjust the text size on the top right-hand side of the screen. We can increase the size of the font to make things easier to read. Or if you want to further utilize the 9 inches available on the screen, we can reduce the font slightly, giving us another 2 lines of information on the display. So now 12 lines of info, which is quite crazy when you consider where we were at a few years back. Now I can either swipe or use the navigation section to select a playlist. For me, it's always about the hands-on control of the select part. But before actually entering a playlist, I do often use the swipe function to browse tracks within that playlist before actually entering it. By doing this, I also have the benefit of entering the playlist with the specific track that I've got in mind being selected. Now, there are major differences in the playlist view also. First of all, we have the name of the playlist we're in indicated at the top, and the amount of tracks within that playlist indicated in the title row. So we've got a preview waveform on the far left. This gives us an overview of the track's layout, but also keeps the overall experience in line with the Rekordbox software. However, its main use is to access the touch preview feature. Provided you're using a DJM-900 Nexus 2 or a DJM V10 connected to Pro DJ Link, we can now preview tracks before loading them into the player, saving critical seconds when we're DJing. As we know, loading a track, skipping through it only to realize it doesn't quite work with the mix takes a lot of time. Sometimes that can cost you 20 to 30 seconds, which is a lot if you're running out of track. So this feature really refines the workflow when we're performing. If I turn link queue on my mixer, any tracks that I now select the preview waveform of will automatically play from link queue. If I want to specifically see the area of that track that I'm auditioning, the playhead will latch so I can move my finger out of the way and actually scan through to specific areas of the track, including breakdowns and drops. We've also got 4 additional columns of info on display. We've got track number, track name, BPM, and then key. So a ton of info to work with here when we're in browse mode. What I love about this new workflow is that we're now also able to sort the current playlist using any of these ID3 tags instantly by pressing the sort icon at the top. To arrange by track title order, simply press track or BPM, etc. To go back to the playlist order that was originally specified within Rekordbox, just go back to the track number order. Now, if you want to further sort your playlist using the ID3 tags other than the default options available, we can do. On the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2, we used to press the menu button and then choose a sort option. On the CDJ-3000, the menu button still acts as play state. However, for further sorting, it's far more advanced. We've got these 2 arrows here, which let us add an additional sub-column. You can specify what options you want to have available here within Rekordbox, meaning we can switch between sort requirements easily. The ones I often use are DJ play count, date added, rating, and yeah, of course, artist. Although I tend not to sort by artist using the sub-column, as we have a specific artist tab in the category column, which when accessed can be easily swiped through, or if we hold down the browse pot, we can search alphabetically. Back in playlist view, because I've now got a sub-column open, you can see that the track's names are scrolling as we've used some more of the real estate on the screen. So there's a couple of things we can do here. So we can toggle the preview waveform display on and off, and toggle this on as and when we want to use it. When I want to audition a track, I bring the preview up. Once I'm done with the preview, I remove it. And I've found myself doing this instinctively. It feels quite second nature. There's also another way of utilizing space in playlist view, and that's to use the playlist shortcut on top of the screen in the display modes. Let me quickly jump up to there and go through these in order. So tag list has been a hugely popular feature since we incorporated it on the CDJ-3000. This allows us to create a live playlist on the fly, which is perfect if you don't actually know what you're going to be playing. If I jump back to my full collection using the track tab just to demo this, sort my track collection by rating to find all the high energy and peak time tracks, and just go through and tag some of the bangers. When I jump to the tag list, they are there ready for me to play and can be accessed across every player in the Pro DJ Link. I can also hit menu and save this selection as a playlist if I want. Of course, if I play them, they'll be saved into the history list anyway, which will then be imported into Rekordbox after I've played from the USB stick. So if I quickly jump back to browse, so you can see the category column again, These are really great for finding specific tracks, and they really open up the browsing capabilities of the player, especially when you want to deviate from a planned set. But our research has shown that the playlist view tends to be the most commonly used. That's why we featured a direct hardware shortcut that takes us straight into that view. And what you'll notice about the tag and playlist shortcuts is that they both eliminate the category column from view, meaning we've got the full width of the screen allocated and no information has to start scrolling, even when I toggle the preview waveform back on. Search also has its own independent shortcut now. Of course, the benefit of the huge screen is that when we access search, the QWERTY keyboard is much larger and therefore easier to use and more accurate. The search will pull up keywords and you can separate keywords using a space. And as soon as I touch the browse pot, the keyboard disappears, displaying the full 12 lines of information. And of course, the search results can be sorted in the same way as previously shown in the other views. We've also now incorporated a clear all button, which speeds up the process no end. Overall, it's a far more usable system for searching for specific tracks that spring to mind or maybe get requested while you're playing. Lastly, the info button that did previously have a shortcut on the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2 has been moved into the touchscreen. This displays the same amount of info as the Nexus 2, but of course on a much larger display and in higher resolution. So artwork is now much more aesthetically pleasing and overall easier to read the information. The CDJ-3000 will also remember the current state, so even if I change view and jump from pane to pane, the info tab will still remain open until I choose to close it. Alright, let's actually load in some music and bring the player to life. So I'll select this Cyrus Hood track. As soon as I press load, you can see the screen comes alive, and this is the industrial MPU kicking in, and bang, full waveform loads instantly. The 8 cues and saved memory points load in a fraction of a second. The on-jog display indicates the track's artwork, and the source indicator LED changes colour to match the source that you've loaded the track from. In this case, the USB on the opposite player. So that's hence why it's gone orange. Now you see 2 lines of information at the top of the screen detailing the track's title, track's artwork, remaining time, BPM, original track key, and you can also choose to see the remaining ID3 tags as well by pressing the info button. Looking at the phase meter, this is a huge upgrade, an increase from 40mm on the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2 to 115mm. So it's actually massive, taking full advantage of the increase in screen size here. The enlarged waveform is also now 3 times the size of the previous player. So we've got a 30mm tall waveform instead of 10mm from the previous CDJ-3000 Nexus 2. It also supports our 3-band waveform now, giving us a super detailed visual description of the current frequencies that are playing in the track. If I hold down the browse pot, we've also got the familiar beat grid adjustment section, but again, new and improved, allowing us to shift beat grids manually, or if I reset that, by half beats for quick alterations. And overall, just much clearer visual indicators on the entire lower section of the display, even down to auto hot cue, auto cue, and the time and tempo displays. And this is something the melodic heads will love. Currently, master tempo is switched on, so this means the key of the track won't change from G minor despite being sped up or slowed down. This is not a new feature, this is a legacy feature now. But as we've incorporated a revised algorithm and due to the overall superior sound quality of the CDJ-3000, this is the best time stretching we've been able to deliver. But if I turn off master tempo, the key change caused by speeding up or slowing down the tempo of the track is now actually displayed on the screen. So this takes the harmonic mixing capabilities up a gear. Master tempo is a great tool for harmonic mixing, but now being able to see this shift in key is a huge asset, especially as we can now specify if we want the original keys or the alphanumeric Camelot wheel style keys to be shown inside our rekordbox preferences. So that brings us on to harmonic mixing and how the CDJ-3000 has moved forward and how it's evolved. Now, this is the first Pioneer DJ player to feature key sync and key shift, which allows a whole new array of performance possibilities when artists use these in their sets. Now, both of these features already exist on players that are in the market already, but doing what we do best, we've made these features our own and we've added a ton of additional value to the CDJ-3000 in how it implements both key sync and key shift. So I'll come back to those features in a moment as we work our way around the player. I've not mentioned the buttons to the top right hand side of the screen yet. That's because they largely coincide with the new hardware controls. So I'll hit play in a moment, and as we get some music running, I can explain how these integrate. These do look familiar from the XDJ range though, and do really cement this player being a hybrid of XDJ and CDJ players. You know, this has all the futuristic power of the XDJ range, with the removal of the optical drive that simply just wasn't used anymore, with all the robustness and expansiveness and hardware control of the workhorse style CDJ. Now, as soon as I hit play, you'll see the familiar bar countdown appears. So this is counting down to the next saved cue point, which I've saved inside Rekordbox. But we've also now got a beat countdown grid, which will sit on top of the waveform. So this changes depending on the zoom rate of the waveform, and this is always there. This is super useful. You know, if I haven't prepared my tracks or saved any cue points, I can always zoom in and out and see how far we are from the 8th beat or from the 16th beat. As I mentioned earlier, we've redesigned the play, cue, and the hot cue buttons and used much hardware and components, meaning all three areas are far superior to the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2. Above the transport controls, we've got our standard track search and skip controls. Above that, we've got our traditional reverse and slip reverse toggle switch, except now we've got on-jog display to indicate when slip is on. Moving up, we've actually got a new hardware button here, the hardware beat jump button, something that was hugely requested. Now, we've been able to access beat jump on the touchscreen before now, and we can still do this. We can open the beat jump pane on the touchscreen and use page 1 for smaller values and page 2 for the larger, more substantial values. But hardware control is always what's really been requested and what we want to use when we're performing. We can jump forward and backward by this amount that's displayed on screen and no longer really have to adhere to the structure of the track. This also ties into the linear positioning of the hot cues, as both can be used hand in hand. We can also change the value directly from the hardware on the fly while holding down call and pressing the beat jump to the right to increase the value or to the left to decrease the value. This, in conjunction with the 3-band waveform, really makes the visual experience so much more powerful than anything else out there. If I zoom right out, you can see a substantial amount of the track now, including breakdowns, build-ups, and drops. You know, this fully helps us see what's coming up in the track and be aware of what we're playing. Now, the iconic looping section is even easier for us to use. We can instigate 4 or 8 beats, and of course this opens up the beat loop pane, but doesn't remove half of the waveform anymore, as it used to on the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2. Even with loop mode open on the touchscreen, we can still see the full track as it progresses. We've also now got a second page of loop templates. So page 1 contains the 4x4 time signature loops, and then the offbeats are contained on the second page. We can use these to create polyrhythmic loops while we're playing. Now, the CDJ will remember what state you've left it in. So if it's left on page 2, when we exit that, we can use the 4 and 8 buttons to access straight loops instantly, and also double or half them using the same controls. And then always have the offbeat options displayed when the loop pane opens, so we can instantly jump to a polyrhythm when we're exiting a track. When we exit a loop, we're also left with 2 indicators on the screen, letting us know where the reloop button will take us back to if we want to use it. When a loop is instigated, we can also use the beat jump buttons to move our loop backwards and forwards in sync as well. Again, a highly requested feature during development. The slip and the quantize buttons have moved. You know, we had to make some adjustments to accommodate the hot cue positioning, but slip is essentially doing the same thing. We've got the same parameters on screen, allowing us to access the same slip loop controls, except like I mentioned earlier, we've now got the slip indicated on the jog display. The rest of the operation of the player is much the same. You know, it's very important that this is a subtle refinement without confusing artists when they stand in front of it. We've got easy ability to delete hot cues and reset them, and also the same control for cue points in the same familiar position. So at this point, in order to show the rest of the features, we need to move on to the secondary player and start loading music in there. And it gets quite exciting now to see how the slave players interact with the master player while we're browsing. I'm going to browse the second player with the master deck playing. That way you can see the actual interaction between the 2 players going on. Now, if I jump into the same playlist that we were previously looking at, the Tracks that are harmonically matching with the master deck will be indicated green under the key column. Although I'm not going to load in a track that harmonically mixes, I'm going to intentionally load a track in that's out of tune with the previous track. This will allow me to demo our high quality key sync algorithm that we've incorporated on the 3000. So as soon as this track's loaded, you can see the CPU kick in, and the load up time, like we mentioned earlier, is almost instant. So breaking this explanation down of key sync into the simplest way, key sync on the CDJ-3000 will shift the key of the slave deck so it works harmonically with the master deck. You know, it's that simple. It puts them harmonically in sync. The biggest question is, how good does this sound, or how will it affect the quality of the music? And it goes without saying, you know, if you shift a track up or down in pitch, even by a few semitones, it can potentially sound very bad or very different to the original sound. So a lot of work has gone into a special algorithm for the CDJ-3000, which includes additional match options. This means that if I press key sync on the slave deck, this function only ever has to shift a track by a plus or minus of 2 semitones in order to find a harmonic match. This means that the CDJ-3000 has the most organic sounding key shift on the market, and without a doubt the most usable execution of this function on the market. When I press key sync, the LED turns on and the master tempo indicator on the screen changes to a blue key sync indication, and the track's current key on the bottom right hand side has gone green. It's important to remember that this is the track's current key once key sync has been applied, and the track's original key is still displayed in the track info at the top of the screen. If I remove the master deck quickly and play this track with key sync applied, listening to this, you wouldn't know that a key shift had been applied. You know, it sounds organic, it sounds real, and the track still sounds rich and playable. If I turn key sync off again, of course you can hear this change audibly. Let me run both tracks together so you can hear with key sync. And then without. Now, you may well get away without using a key shift for mixing tracks like this, but what you find is using this allows the tracks to glue together in a much more pleasing way. And the feeling you get when listening to a blend that's harmonically matched, even if only on a subconscious level, will be far more enjoyable. Now I'm going to break this feature down even further by opening up the key shift control within the touchscreen. So this gives us manual transposition of the track's pitch and allows us to use key shift in a performance way. So as soon as we open up the key shift pane, you can see the waveform size decreases to accommodate the key shift control. Now the controls consist of 3 buttons, so very easy user interface. The center button is the reset button and also shows the track's original key. The right button shows the key if we were to shift up by a semitone, and the left button shows the key if we shift down by a semitone. I can also see that with one semitone shift, either up or down, this track will be a harmonic match with the master deck as the keys are indicated in green. Now this layout's designed so we can use the feature as a performance control when we're playing. Transposing the track's key while it's playing can have an extremely powerful effect to the listeners. This can create a modulation effect and also adds drama and can be used to create builds and change the sonic perception of the track while you're playing it live. Now, just to further explain why we put so much work into ensuring that a key match could always be found within 2 semitone shifts, I'm going to scan up to the next match by shifting key. So this is, I believe, if we scan through, 5 semitone shifts up. And now let's listen to the track in this state. So this is not something you'd want to use across the whole track and play out for the duration of the track. But that being said, it's something that can be used creatively to great effect when you're performing live. Moving on to a feature that until now has only been available in software programs, and a feature that almost every software DJ has asked us to incorporate for a very long time. Now available on our hardware. You know, this is stacked waveforms. So the challenge during the development for this feature was, how do we include the waveforms of 2 players or multiple players, you know, stacked waveforms on a single player's screen? It seems so simple when I actually explain the hardware and how we've integrated it, but a lot of consideration and many mock-ups to this GUI were created before we concluded that this integration you're going to see today is the most useful and the most user-friendly. Now, we've included this feature within the phase meter. So the phase meter now has the option to switch to waveform view. We're now seeing the master deck's full track on the slave deck. So super powerful processing going on here. This also includes the bar countdown from the previous track. So again, extremely useful display, all from one single screen. Zooming out also really helps us understand both of the tracks that we're looking at on the single screen and fully realize what's going to happen as we progress through the track and what to expect while we're playing. Just further solidifying the experience of playing on the CDJ-3000 as a fully integrated software experience. Another feature I love on the CDJ-3000, which is completely unique, is the touch cue feature. So this also works in conjunction with the link queue on the DJM-900 Nexus 2 or the DJM-V10. This allows us to audition upcoming sections of the track that's currently loaded into the player and that's currently playing out live to the crowd. With link queue turned on, I can press and hold the full waveform on the touchscreen display, and the area that I'm holding will play through my headphones without the crowd hearing any changes to the track. This is perfect if you're playing back-to-back sets, or even if you're just mixing out of tracks that you're not 100% familiar with. Lastly, let's go over some of the smaller improvements to the player. So the track filter button is still in the same place in the navigation section, but the function's actually much easier to use now due to the 9-inch screen. If I hold down the edit button, you can see the visual upgrade straight away, especially when I jump into my tag view. If I apply the category section and then set for the player to filter out all the tracks with the daytime tag, the amount of tracks included in the filter is now also shown. This is really useful when browsing the full track collection as opposed to just individual playlists. We've also made some subtle but really useful changes to the shortcut options. We can now change the brightness of the screen and the on-jog display directly from within Shortcut. The 3000 screen actually goes brighter than the CDJ-3000 Nexus 2, so extremely useful if you're playing in well-lit conditions or for gigs outside. We can also now shift the waveform playhead position to the left, meaning we can see much more of the forthcoming track. Of course, we can connect a mobile device running Rekordbox Mobile directly to the USB port on the back of the player. A device has actually been connected throughout this demo. And the CDJ-3000 also acts as a hardware unlock device for Rekordbox Performance Mode, for those DJs who want to control the Rekordbox software using HID control. So there you have it, the CDJ-3000. This is our brand new flagship multiplayer, and like I mentioned at the start of this video, the next stage in the evolution of the CDJ range. We're extremely proud to bring you these players, incorporating a whole host of new features that have largely been requested within the industry and by the artists that we work with over the last few years. Now, this was a fairly detailed overview of the product, but if you haven't done so already, please get down to your local Pioneer DJ retailer. Get hands-on on the product, put it through its paces, and really check out the next generation infrastructure and how this works for your style of playing. Thank you for your time.